All righty. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to have Riley June with us here. She is also primary trained through AMI, and I'm just going to ask her some questions so we can get to know her. Always, please feel free to ask a Montessorian and reach out and let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. Okay, let's get started. So the first question I have for you, Riley, we kind of talked briefly about this before. How would you best define Montessori? What are some of your favorite lessons, and what is your background?
Okay, so there's like a couple questions here. I'm going to start with my background. So yes, my name is Riley Lunt, and my middle name is June, which my Instagram account is Montessori by June, and I'll talk more about why. But so my background is that I'm a third generation Montessori guide. So my grandma is a guide, my mom, and then me, and we all have the middle name June. And so that's why I chose to use that name. A part of my business title, so to say, is just to honor my past and my background and their influence in helping me be where I'm at. So I actually grew up going to a Montessori school until 7th grade. And then after that, I transitioned to public school just because we moved away from the school we were at. And so I've kind of always had this Montessori influence, and my mom used a lot of Montessori principles at home with raising us. And then after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I hadn't ever thought that I would go and get certified to be Montessori trained. But as I started thinking about like my goals of my future, I knew that I wanted to be a mom. I knew that I wanted to have a family, and those were big part of my goals. And I was like, well, I'm just going to become trained because I know that it'll help me as a mother. And if it happens to be a career that I love, then great. And if not, then at least it's good information as a parent. And so that was kind of my outlook going into it. But then definitely during the training, I just fell in love with the theory even more. And it was just really a neat experience to be like, oh, I already knew all of this. Like I grew up with this. I just didn't know like how to put it into words. So that was really cool. And then that's kind of my background basically. And then you asked what, like to define Montessori a little bit. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
This is the hardest question for me. I don't know why. It's so hard to make Montessori so concise because there's just so much to it. But basically, Montessori.
I have a trick for you.
Oh, you do? Okay, you'll have to tell me later because I'm still struggle with this somehow. But I would just say that Montessori is an educational theory, first of all. A lot of people think that it's like a parenting theory, but it's actually an educational theory used in schools created by Maria Montessori in like the early 1900s. And it's all based off of the idea that children have an innate potential to grow and develop, and that they also have the innate ability to develop and teach themselves, if that makes sense. And the way that they do that is the way that they interact with their environment. And so Montessori focuses on preparing the environment to fit the individual child's needs and recognize that that child has their own unique interests, their own unique development. And a phrase you may hear in Montessori a lot is follow the child. And that's kind of the easiest way I could explain it is you follow the child's needs, and you do that by preparing that environment for them and preparing yourself as the adult to fulfill those needs. There's so much to Montessori though. Yep. It's so hard to give a brief summary, but yeah. And then there was one more question.
The only thing I would multi-age classrooms and one-on-one lessons. But I just tell people the study of human development.
Definitely.
And here's the AMI website. Let me know if you have any questions.
Oh, Oh, that's 100% what I do. I'm so good at referring to other resources on Instagram. I'm like, oh, here's the link to someone that can speak better than I can. So, yep. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about like in the classrooms, the difference between traditional and Montessori is usually 3 years in the classroom and the focus on the children versus the focus on the teacher, like you were saying, individual lessons for the child,
Right.
which is
Have you
awesome.
seen
I love
Trevor
that.
Eisler's video?
What'd you say?
Have you seen Trevor Eisler's video?
I
Trevor
don't know if
Eisler,
I
Montessori
have.
Madness.
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. I'll link it down below. I'll send it to you. It's
Yes.
really good. He compares traditional and public, and he was a parent, and he wrote the book. I can't remember the rest of his background, but he was just enamored with Montessori, and his book is really good.
I'll have to watch the video. That's
So
interesting.
what are your favorite lessons? Because we're both Montessori children. So
Yes,
I
my
have
favorite
mine.
lessons. Okay. So I have like a few really distinct memories from being in like the primary classroom. Like I don't have like a ton of memories, but I have really distinct memories of the math materials. And for some reason, the trinomial cube, and maybe a lot of people who are watching this don't know what that is. It's like a puzzle. It's like a 3D puzzle, basically. Anyway, for some reason, I have really distinct memories of that, and especially the math materials. And I just love Montessori math. I love it to death. And I think that's why I loved math my whole life. Like my associate's degree was in math, and like I just continued to love math because I think the way that Montessori teaches math is so concrete and helps you make those abstractions later on in such a different way. Anyway, so math materials, 100% my
Right.
favorite. I don't know if I've ever
Yeah. I love the
lesson, but I love math materials. Yeah.
I hear you. It wasn't until I took primary training that I realized that when we worked with the binomial and trinomial cubes, that they were an indirect preparation for geometry and a squared plus b squared plus c squared. I didn't understand that in school and in college. And then I took the primary training and I was like, oh, because
yeah.
I mean, I saw it and I built with it. I could build it, but I didn't ever get to that point where I made that connection because I was in elementary, but my teacher had a different kind of training and we didn't get into that in first grade Montessori. But
Well, that's
yeah,
like
so that was so cool when I saw that.
That's like the beauty of Montessori is that the children are absorbing those ideas without even knowing it, right? Like I had no clue that was kind of a math material and prepping for math later on. And that's the point, is that the child doesn't really know. They're just absorbing that information. But it is really cool from a perspective of working with it from a young child and then being trained and being like mind blown. Holy cow, I didn't even know. It's so fun.
Yes, right. There's so many different connections. So can you share how your mother and grandmother impacted your life and career in Montessori and a little about their background in education?
Yeah, so I'll start with their background. So my grandma, she I don't know exactly when, but she was trained when her children were young, and she got trained like a lot of other people. They wanted to have a career that could include their children. And anyway, so she got the training and she would do in-home preschools for a little bit when her children were young. And then she has really worked in a lot of the schools here in the Arizona community. And then right now she has an in-home preschool, just a small one classroom. My aunt is also trained and she's her assistant. And so it's just kind of a family business. And at one point, like my mom and my grandma had a school together. Anyway, so they've always just kind of loved having just like a small classroom in their home where they can have their children, and like all her grandchildren have gone through her preschool program. So she's just amazing. I don't know how she's still teaching after all these years. That's how you know a true Montessori guide is when they don't get burnt out and they just love it even more. And she's like a lifelong learner. And then my mom, she got her bachelor's degree in elementary education, actually, but when she did her student teaching, she got permission to do it through a Montessori school, which is very different type of education, I guess. So yeah, so her degree is in elementary education, but she worked in a Montessori school for her teaching. So she's not technically trained, but she did get like that one-on-one training with a teacher in a classroom. And she, again, has always had like little preschools in her home, which I was in, and all my siblings. Anyway, so their influence on me, well, first of all, just their character. Like they have learned from children, and they have allowed themselves to be humble and patient, and like those characteristics that you really need to be a Montessori guide, they have internalized. And it was very evident to me as I graduated high school and decided what I wanted to do. I decided, well, I don't know what I want to do, but I know who I want to be. And I want to be like my mom and like my grandma, and the characteristics that they have. And I knew that their Montessori training and their years of work with children kind of molded them to be the way that they were. And so that was really the motivation for me to become trained and take this path, is just knowing that it was a way for me to become better as a person and better as a mother. And I'm still working on that for sure. But I mean, there's no better way to learn than from the children themselves. So
Exactly. No, I hear you. Yeah, they're little teachers too.
yeah.
So what inspired you to start Montessori by June, and what is your main goal in relation to helping families with your business?
So I taught in a Montessori school after I finished my training for about a year and a half. And then I had my daughter Hazel, and I always knew I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, no matter what the cost was, even if I couldn't work, even if we didn't, maybe have as much money. I always knew I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I did choose to leave the school and just take care of my daughter. But I still wanted a way to really just a way to kind of hold myself accountable to those Montessori principles, and a way to kind of be creative and have something of my own still. Because, as like a new mom, you feel like you don't have anything of your own anymore. Like you don't work, you just take care of your child, which is an amazing opportunity, but you need something of your own. So I was like, well, I'll just start an Instagram account. It'll just be kind of fun to just share what I'm doing with Hazel at home. And I'm not trained in 0 to 3, I'm trained in 3 to 6. So it kind of was a learning curve for me at first to learn these, the 0 to 3 kind of curriculum, I guess you could say. So it was kind of just a way for me to learn more. And I followed a lot of other Montessori accounts, and it was fun to interact with those people. So really it just started out just kind of be fun. And then I don't even know what happened in between then and now. I have no clue. It just kind of took off, and it was an eye-opener that parents are wanting this method at home and needing, I think parents just
Right.
need those
Especially with
tools,
COVID.
right? Everyone gets thrown into parenthood and you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So it's nice to just have some tools to know how to interact with your child and how to serve your child in the way that you want to. So my goal, I guess, is basically to just help parents just use Montessori to the extent that they want to. I want it to be like shame-free, no pressure. Like you don't have to be strict Montessori, just use what works for you and what makes you happy and what brings joy to your life. And that's kind of my goal, is just to put it out there. And if people use it at home and it helps them, great. If not, whatever, it's fine too.
You have the most beautiful website. I love
Thank
your website.
you. Thank
I love
you.
that. Yeah. You're welcome. So, do you have a favorite story that you could share about when you were teaching in the classroom, or maybe something that you've done with Hazel even at home?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and I can think of a lot of stories, but the one story that I can relate to the most when I was teaching. So it was my first year teaching. I mean, I only taught like a year and a half, but my first year teaching, and there was this little girl in our class. She was new to the school. She was probably about 3.5, and her mom did warn me before the school started that she was going to be a crier, which I was like, no worries, whatever. And she would come to school every day and just cry, like the whole time, like the whole half of the day that she came, she would just cry, and she was just, nervous. It's a new environment. And what we did to help her is just allowed her to sit back and be an observer of the environment and be able to just kind of work at her own pace. And throughout, a couple weeks, it probably was a span of like 3 weeks, she went from being this, this girl that just would scream and cry the whole day to wanting to be involved in circle time and wanting to, lead songs and actually be starting to do practical life work. And the reason I love the story is because that was me as a child. My mom will tell you that I was so shy. I cried if a stranger even looked at me. I mean, I was as shy as could get. And so I just related with that little girl so much. And my mom always talked about how Montessori is the way that she was able to help me to become confident in myself, and to see, for me to be on like the flip side of that, of being able to help another girl work through that confidence and feeling safe in the environment. It was just like, oh, I'm like helping past me, So that was cool to just see the way that the Montessori classroom is set up so that each child's needs can be fulfilled, and that you really can, like that child could work at her own pace, and there was no pressure for her to, be doing the same things as the other children. And she would just follow me and just participate in all my one-on-one lessons. She would just sit next to me and observe, and until she was comfortable. And it's just such a great environment for specifically those types of children. And it was awesome for me to see that change in her. So that was probably my favorite story.
That's one of my favorite transformations to watch, is when they go from scared or anything like that, and then all of a sudden, that was that little boy I had. He came from that really, traumatic background, and then he was teaching, telling the other children what to do, and I kept him next to me. I just kept him next to me, and oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yep.
So, what are 3 quick tips that you can give parents about working with their children at home?
Okay. I was trying to think about this one. So when people ask like what's the best way to start, or at least the easiest way to start, I always say practical life activities. And maybe you probably agree that's probably the easiest way to implement Montessori at home. And practical life is basically just including your children in your day-to-day activities, helping them to feel responsibility. There's so many benefits to practical life activities because it helps concentration. The list goes on and on. So I always just say, take a little inventory of your day, what activities you do, and find a way to include your child in that. No matter how small or how large that task is for them, it's valuable to them, even if they don't even help you at all, and it's even harder to do, it's valuable to them and it's worth it. Like my daughter put away our silverware yesterday, and I had to go back and I had to fix some of it later on. Like it's, didn't really save me time or energy necessarily, but seeing her like so engaged and concentrated and matching the silverware was just priceless. So I always say practical life activities. I actually took some notes because I wanted to make sure hold on, pull up my phone. Let's see, what else did I say? Oh, accessibility, making things in your home accessible to the child so that they can be more independent. So like a wardrobe that's accessible, having stools around the house, things like that, I think is really helpful to encourage independence in the child. And then in general, I think Montessori is just less is more. I mean, in every aspect, right? Like less stuff, less planned activities, just more child-led activities. less adult interruption. I mean, in every aspect, Montessori is teaching like less is more, I would say. It's hard to
Those are
like,
awesome tips.
yeah, it's hard to really give straight application for that, but yeah.
No, I love how, and I was thinking of totally different things kind
Yeah,
of
right.
it through my brain. And that was so awesome because I was like, oh, that's such a good one.
What would
I
you
like that
say?
one.
What are your three things?
Um, well, kind of the things I talked to you about before, as far as like giving the child a chance to repeat what you showed them, and then,
Definitely.
trying to find ways to think outside the box to build concentration. Like my son right now, one of, the human tendencies and the characteristics. I always get them mixed up, but orientation and exploration. So he has a scooter and he's scooting about town right now. And I follow him in the car. And he is absolutely loving it. Remember when we were younger, it was kind of a different world. It was a lot safer, and I don't know, we would stay and play outside until the street lights, turned on. And so I'm staying with him, making sure he's safe, but he is learning how to navigate the city of Flagstaff on his scooter. And he absolutely loves it. He's like, I need to go to the store for you and I don't want you to come with me. And I'm like, okay. And then I park like half a block down and watch him at the store.
So cute. I love that idea.
He's my
I think
last
my daughter
one.
would do that now.
So
It's better.
he's my last one. And it's funny because my dad was the last one. And by the time he came home, my grandma was like snoring and she wasn't concerned about him at all. But maybe it's because when I was with my girls, I had a lot more support with family and whatnot. And it's just me and him. So it's different. Um, I'm just a lot more like hands-on with him. But what you said, I really like what you said about less is more, because we were talking about that in the classroom, and the helicopter parents make it much more challenging for us to work as teachers than the parents who are not nearly as wanting to control their child's development per se.
Definitely.
And so we were having this awesome conversation about that, and how, when the parents stand back, they have instincts, they have their own urge to do certain things, and
Sensory
they will
periods are at
blossom.
play. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Exactly. I know. It's so cool. So, and then it's like some people say Montessori is really chaotic and unstructured. I've heard that a lot. And I'm like, not if you prepare the environment and the teacher's observing and taking notes.
Oh, that's true. I
You know,
mean,
it's like not
the
lessons,
prepared
obviously.
environment is very structured, like incredibly intentional and incredibly structured, that you don't notice that if you're not trained. But if when you are trained, you know that every single thing that's placed in the environment is for a purpose, and so intentional. And that is why you don't have to be as structured as the adults in like your involvement, is because the environment is structured. Totally.
You're right.
I,
Yeah,
I
like
love
the
talking to another
controllers and
Montessorian. It's fun.
it is, yeah. So, what does your morning routine look like with Hazel? Do you have any tips on how to manage a little person?
I know. I was like, my morning routine is not maybe like incredibly Montessori, but I would say, I mean, the things that I do that I guess are kind of Montessori principles for routine is keeping things consistent. And you don't have to like have a consistent schedule per se, but routines are very important to kind of give the child cues of what's coming next, helping them, like they can't tell time, right? They don't have a sense of how many like what 5 minutes is or an hour. They have just little cues throughout the day to help them know where they are throughout the day. And so we have very I don't want to say strict, but semi-strict routines that we stick to. So for example, like when we start making breakfast, we have, like, she knows that when we start making breakfast, she gets into our learning tower, we wash our hands, we start preparing food together. She will help me set the table sometimes. And so first of all, like having those kind of more strict routines, and then also just including the child in everything. In every little task, I try to include Hazel as much as possible, or at least as much as I can that day with the energy and patience that I have, right? But like with her diaper changing, she helps throw away the diaper. She helps to put lotion on her body, and every part of the routine, I'm trying to find some way to help her be involved. And that also just helps her feel like, okay, this is my body. I have control over my own body. And then she also gives her that sense of responsibility and order. So I don't know if I have any specific tips about routines, just because I don't focus a lot on that in my educating, I guess. But that's basically what I do, is just including her and having those kind of cues throughout the day to help her know what's coming next. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
Right, maybe not the best
I
answer on
listened
that
to
one.
this. No, that's great. I listened to this amazing woman named Jen Riday. It's called Vibrant Happy Woman. It's a podcast. And she always asks about a daily morning routine, because as women entrepreneurs, it's challenging to stay focused on one particular task. I find myself like, oh my gosh, I got to go do this. Oh, I got to do this, because I don't have a boss saying, hey, here's your schedule. Here's your lunch break. Here's your,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've struggled with that for sure, knowing when to work and communicating with my husband, who's watching Hazel and when. But yeah, just consistency for me. And those schedules help her, but they help me as well.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. So what's your favorite book and who's your biggest inspiration?
I'm assuming we're talking about Montessori books, right?
It
So,
can be.
well, that's pretty much all I read.
Right. Well, because we were both raised in Montessori, you can find, it's the study of human development, right? You can find a connection in almost every book. Like, what do I have over here? I have The Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire by Deepak Chopra.
Okay, there we go.
That's what I'm reading right now, because I need to find some normalization within myself and just kind of find some peace. And
Definitely. I'll be honest, I'm not a big reader. I mean, I'm a math person, like I said earlier, but I enjoy reading. I just I don't prioritize it in my life as much as I should. But the books that I'm currently reading, and just because they help me with, I guess, the stage of life that I'm in right now, is I love The Montessori Toddler and the Montessori Baby by, I think it's Simone Davis.
okay,
And I'm kind of reading through those because it helps me as a parent, and also helps me kind of create my content and know what kind of questions parents might be asking. But it's super, super helpful. I've read all of like Maria Montessori's books, in my training, and they're all really, really good. She is so wise. I love reading her books. But these books are a little bit more simple and a little bit more like application based. Like, okay, what can you do right now to start Montessori at home? So I really like those right now. That's kind of the ones I'm kind of reading through just slowly. So.
Nice. One of my favorite ones I meant to tell you about is It's Hard to Get Right Now. I think it's part of the Clio series, and it's almost out of print, but you can get it on openlibrary.org, I think it is. It's a free source resource. I can't remember the term, but it's a free sourced website. I
What's the
believe
book
it's
called?
called The Study of the Human Being. No, The Development of the Human Being. It has a naked little baby on the cover, and I've mentioned it a lot in my YouTube videos, but it was written by Dr. Montanero, and she was one of the first 0 to 3 assistance to infancy trainers.
Oh, I think I do have that one. I think because my mom had it, and she has like all the old Montessori books and passes them down to me. I haven't read it yet, but I need to.
Yes, it's my favorite. It was my Bible when Greg was a baby.
Yeah, I love that.
It's really good. Yeah. Because it's not just Montessori, but she talks about breastfeeding. She talks about,
That's so helpful.
Toilet, what do they call it? Toilet learning?
Awareness. There's lots of terms for it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just all sorts of things like that. So who's your biggest inspiration?
Is it corny if I say my mom and my grandma? I know I already talked
No.
about them, but I actually I've never really had like, like most people's uh inspiration are like, people in history or whatever, like famous people. And I feel like I just relate to people I know personally. And so I all of my female family members, I absolutely adore. Like my mother-in-law is also a teacher. She teaches kindergarten, and I just adore her. And my sister-in-laws, I mean, all of them are just such great influences in my life, and they're just really good examples of mothers and just good human beings. And then of course I got to say Maria Montessori. I mean, she's the best. But I'm sticking to all my female family members. I just love. I love them. And because I know them personally, it's just that much more special to me. So
Nice. Yeah. So if you could only pick one, which characteristic about yourself do you credit your success to?
oh my goodness. I read this question last night and it stumped me. I could not, I don't know. I really couldn't choose one. I would say the characteristics that I developed because of going through like Montessori school are the ones that I see now that are helping me to be successful. So like the thing like independence and responsibility and a lifelong learner. I mean, that's the goal of Montessori, is to help children be lifelong learners and to be global members of their community, right? So I would say just those basic things that you start teaching children in like even the primary classroom, such as independence and responsibility, those are the things that have carried me literally through my whole life. It's just crazy that I can attribute it to like a specific reason and see like where the attribute comes from. But like independence, I feel like I'm a pretty independent person. I like to just take action and get things done. And I feel like that has come from my Montessori background for sure. So I would say independence.
So where do you see yourself in the next 3 years? And do you have a favorite quote?
Oh, yes, I do have a favorite quote. Okay, I'll say for the next 3 years, gosh, it's so hard to know because a year ago when I started my Instagram account, I did not foresee this path that I took, I guess. But what I'm planning on doing is I want to continue to educate parents, but I want to do it in a more effective way. It's so hard to educate about Montessori on Instagram because you have these 15-second reel videos or 45-second stories to portray even just one principle is like impossible. It is so hard. And because Montessori is like the principles are so interwoven and connected, I want a way to educate parents more fully about Montessori. So I'm starting to create online courses, and I'm currently finishing my first online course, which is it's like an intro to Montessori theory. So it talks a lot about Maria Montessori's child developmental theories. It talks about the prepared environment, and it talks about the prepared adult. So just like the very basics of Montessori and like that theory that is so important to understand why we do the things that we do. And so that's my first online course, and I hope to create more based off of the topics that I feel that parents are needing. And so stay tuned. Hopefully those will be up. It's been a long time coming, but that's what I foresee, is switching my education less on Instagram and more to these programs that can be more informative and teach Montessori in a more full, like deep experience, if that makes sense. And that's what I foresee for the next couple of years, is being able to just find other ways that I can use this skill to help parents. So who knows? Who knows?
Do you have a date yet for when your course is going to go live?
I don't. I'm estimating middle of May to like end of May. So pretty soon. Like I literally just recorded my last video for it last night, I think. But
Oh my
man, it's a
gosh.
learning curve to understand like the technology behind it. That's the part I'm stuck on, is like how to get it out there to people. And anyway, the technology part is hard and it's a learning curve. But I'm hoping that once I get one underneath my belt, the other ones will be easier, and we'll just see where that path takes me. See if they're successful, continue doing them. If they're not, reevaluate what parents want and need. So yeah, so hopefully middle of May.
That's
Fingers
awesome.
crossed.
Yeah, they talk about that in elementary. They call it cosmic education, where we learn as adults. And still to this day, like, did you know the planes of development keep going? So there's
Oh
0
yeah.
to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, and then 18 to 27 is 0 to 6, and then 27 on, and you can match them back and look for similarities and try and figure out. I forgot which plane I'm in right now, but I think I'm in the one, like a 0 to 6 one, where I'm really learning and, starting new things. But you master the peripheral and then you work your way in, and they call it the cosmic education. It's so cool. So do you have a favorite quote you would like to share with us?
Yes, I have so many favorite quotes, but this is the one that I particularly love right now. And of course, it's by Marie Montessori. And it says, "In the child is much knowledge, much wisdom. When we do not profit from it, it is only because of neglect on our part to become humble and to see the wonder of the soul and learn what the child can teach." And that is just beautiful to me, because when you really stop to humble yourselves and like just sit there and observe your child, you can learn so much. And I feel like I'm in that stage right now where I just really appreciate my daughter and the things she's doing, and I just love watching her, and she teaches me so much. So
That's awesome.
I love that quote right now. I'm sure it'll change next week, but
It's a really good one. Yeah. Could you share with us your website and your Instagram and your information so we know how to reach out to you?
definitely. Yeah. So my Instagram is Montessori, and then it's _by_June. If you just type in Montessori by June, it should pop up. And then my website is technically, it is available. Like you can go look at it, but I don't really have anything on there yet, but it's just montessoribyjune.com. And I'm always love getting like messages on Instagram. I love getting emails from people. That is very fulfilling to me, to be able to feel like I actually am helping someone. So I love getting like feedback and like hearing from people and people's experiences. So yeah, definitely, I would love to hear from anyone.
And you're on Facebook too, right?
Oh, I think I did create a Facebook account just because it was not much more effort for me. And when I post on Instagram, it goes on Facebook. So yeah, you can reach out through Facebook too. I'm pretty sure it's just Montessori by June. But yeah,
I hear you.
I
Okay,
haven't really
that's
done
good.
anything
So
on there yet.
Instagram is the best way to connect with you.
Yes, Instagram is the best way. And then my email is also in my Instagram bio. So yep.
Yeah, it's Montessori by June at gmail.com. Right?
Yep. Everything's pretty much the
Great.
same title. So
That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us here today. And
fun.
I hope I really enjoyed getting to know you and talking Montessori. And I hope you guys all enjoyed getting to know Riley. And of course, feel free to ask us any questions. I always have to say, my son reminds me to say, please click like and subscribe if you like this video for more Montessori content.
Right.
And feel
The
free to ask
businessy side.
questions.
You have to say it. That's so funny. But yes,
Yeah.
subscribe, because she's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good talking to you.
Mhm.
Let's do this again.